Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Zevachim Daf Chav Zayin. We're going to begin on the bottom of Chav Vav Amud Beis, 3 lines on the bottom, Meisvei. So we have the Mishnah that we saw in yesterday's daf that told us that if a person put the dam in the improper place, but at least they put it on the Mizbeach, so the din the Mishnah says is that it's pasul ve'in bo kares. So whether or not, let's say you put the dam, for example, above the chut hasikra, which was this horizontal line in the middle of the mizbeach, it was supposed to go on the bottom, below it, and it was supposed to go above it, or you put it on the inside instead of it was on the outside, vice versa, or you put it on the kevesh, on the ramp, but not, again, in the right place, so since it's pasul. So we saw, according to the opinion of Shmuel, and today we're also going to see two other opinions, Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, regarding this din. When the Mishnah said it's pasul, it just means that the basar is pasul, you can't eat it. However, the zrika still counts, or using the language of Shmuel, is balim nischapru, that they do achieve kapara. The fact that it went on the mizbeach at all, even though it wasn't at the exact right place, that's enough for the Baal to achieve kapara. And then the Gemara continued to discuss this a little bit more. So now the Gemara asks the question on Shmuel's opinion. So a person, not that they actually did this, but they had an improper machshava. So we saw already in the beginning of this Masechta that depending on improper machshava, that could cause problems. But in addition to that, there's also a din of pigul, which is also having improper machshava at the time of shechita about what you will do as far as the zrika is concerned. Let's say your intention is chutz l'mkaimai, chutz l'zmanai, you're going to do it outside of the proper time frame of this carbon, or outside of the proper place where it was supposed to be done. So that's a machshava pigul. So says Rashi that when it comes to this person, chishev, and here we're talking about a kohen kosher, his intention was an improper intention. So what does it say? It says like this: l'alter kosher. Right away, it's kosher. What does that mean? So says Rashi, im chishev al manas lizrek shalom kaimo hayoim kosher. Let's say his improper machshava was to do the zrika not in the right place, but it was for him to do it today. So it wasn't a issue of time, but was more of an issue of place. So we say, in that situation, it's kosher. Says Rashi, kosher hu bezrika haigenis mimkaimoi. When he actually did the zrika, and he did it in the right place, even though it's true that at the time of the shechita, let's say, that he had improper machshav as to where he would end up doing the zrika in the wrong place on the mizbeach, it's still kosher. However, l'macher pasul, as reading the parentheses, if his intention was not for today, but was for another time, then it would not be good. So let's look in Rashi. When it comes to today, ein machshava poiselas, it will not pasul el chutz l'zmanai v'chutz l'mkaimai, only if he has an improper idea of it being totally outside of the proper time or place. Upesach v'chatas shalishman, as we saw at the beginning of our Masechta. However, back in the Gemara, chaz v'chishev chutz l'mkaimo pasul ve'en bo kares. Let's say, says Rashi, ba'avoda shniya, when it comes to the second avoda, he has another improper machshava, to eat it outside of its proper place. So pasul, then chayav and kares al chilasai. However, as Rashi points out, based on the language of the Gemara, that he's not going to be getting kares. Why not? So Rashi says chutzlim lizmanoi pigul v'chayav of kares. So what does that mean when the Gemara says chutzim zmanoi pigol v'chayin lav kares? What's the difference between chutzim kaima and chutz lizmanoi? Why are we more strict when it says outside of the proper time? So Rashi says, Shari Karbano miyutur, the Hachi Tinamas Nisan, we're going to learn pretty soon. Chutzlim Koimoi, when a person has an outside of the proper place, Machshava, Chutzl Zmanoi Pigel, or outside of the proper time frame, both of them are Pigel. Shari Kirbu Matirov. Mehen bepigel mehen b'shtikim inkan psumachshava cheres l'haitz miyad pigel. And here's another important point which we're going to emphasize numerous times, that the only time it's an issue of pigel is that there's no other psul attached to it. But if, in other words, everything else is perfect except for this machshava, then it's considered to be pigel. So lamachar pasul, back in the Gemara, if let's say, that's why it's in parentheses, lamachar pasul, if his machshava is to do it tomorrow, not today but tomorrow, so it's possible. Since Rashi, let's say during the shechita that he was thinking about putting the dam in the wrong place, that he was gonna, it was supposed to be on the bottom below the chut sikra, and he ended up putting it above. Not only that, but his machshava was to also do the zrika tomorrow, not today, then it'll be puzzle, as opposed to what we said, that if his machshava on the b'shas shchita will alter, that he ends up doing the zrika properly right away, it's kosher. Chaz v'chishev, if let's say, when it comes to the next avoda, he has another machshava, bin chutz l'zman, bin chutz l'mkoyim puzzle, bin boikaris. Interestingly enough, in this case, even if it's chutz l'zmanoi, he will not be chayiv karis. So why? So Rashi says, Chaz v'chishe v'sulo chayil lehapigol do kirbu kol matirin, because the reality is that there's already a problem in this situation from before. You already did something to passel it from before in your original machshava, which is why it says l'machar pasel, and therefore it's already pasel, and therefore the second machshava we're going to say there's no din pigel, there's no karis. So it's only chutz lizmano, there'll be pigel and bichayev karis when there was no psul before it, or there's nothing else, any other issues with it. But over here, since it was already pasul from before, so now the second machshava, even though it seems like a machshava which constitute pigel to bichayev karis, in the event it was bichutz lizmano, you're not going to bichayev karis, because it's only, as again Rashi says, that's only the situation where there is no other psul. There's nothing else attached to it. So, why are we bringing this all down? So, we're going to end up having a kasha in a second. So, the inbukars. Now, according to Shmuel, he says that regarding the zrika sadam, even though the dam was not done in the right place, it does at least count that it is ki'ilu like it was done in the right place, because we said that at least, okay, you won't be able to, the meat's puzzle, but still he said that Baal Mischapra, that it does achieve kapara for the Baal. So since it achieves kapara for the Baal, so if that's the case, that's the din, that it achieves something, so hai psul pigahu. So this psul apparently is pigel. Look in Rashi, binmia. Amai karile pasul lahai dechishiv litin shlomim kaim lamachar. This case where he said that tomorrow I am going to have this, during the time of the shechita, he's thinking I'm going to do the zrika in the wrong place and also at the wrong time. So l'chayra, why do we say it's pasul pigelhu shahari chishe b'shchita? What would we say? That it's considered that during the time of the shechita, his intention was almanas lizrak dam l'machar, the achilas mizbeach, the achilas mizbeach was going to be tomorrow. Elav kim kaimo dami v'lo chashiva achila. So it's not considered to be an achila. So the question is, according to Shmuel, since it does accomplish something, so then how is it shaykh? Again, hai psul pigahu. So apparently, when we're saying that he already has a psul, But the question is, but he at least does matter. At least he says that the Baal is mechaper. So Omer Mar Zutra Zrika Deshari Basar Bachila Maislidi Pigel. The reason why this is not considered to be pigel over here, that's Ein Bokaris, right? There's no pigel, so it should be pigel, right? Because pigel is when there's nothing else wrong, right? Everything else is fine. So the fact that the Baal is mechaper must be that nothing else is wrong, right? So then, therefore, it should be pigel, right? Right. So the question is, right? It should be pigel, but the answer is it's not, because in this situation there is still some problem. What do you mean? We said it's mechaper, so it doesn't matter because it has to be that the basar would also be allowed. This is how we read it. Zrika d'shari basar b'achila, only if it's something which is totally good, not only kapara but also that the basar can be eaten, that will be ma'aslidi pigel. However, zrika d'loy shari basar b'achila, which is in our case, right, which is our Mishnah, so it's loy ma'aslidi pigel, and therefore that's the reason why. That since your machshava, even though it's true, if let's say our Mishnah, where you did the zrika in the wrong place, that it does achieve something, right? So therefore, when you have that machshava, that really shouldn't be a problem to passel it, as we ask, because it's still a kapara. So therefore, now that you had the machshava of the wrong place, lamachar, so that should cause pigel. So we say no, because pigel is only when everything else is fine, but not everything is fine. Okay, it's true that if you would have done the zrika in the wrong place, at least you achieve kapara, but it doesn't. That's not all we're looking at. We're also looking at the chilas basar, and since he can't eat the meat, so therefore, in this case, where it's lamachar, it will be pasul, but it will not be pigel, because there's still something problematic with it. Okay, so that is the answer. Rav Ashi Lamar Zutra Menolacha. So how do we know all this? Dichsiv, because the pasuk, this is the only pasuk on this Amud, it says V'im he'achel yi'achel mibsar zevach shlomav b'yom hashlishi. Let's say you eat from the carbon shlomim outside of the proper time. Lo yiratzeh. It's not proper. And also, when you're doing the shechita, you're not allowed to have the machshava of chutz lizmanai, which is clearly what the pasuk is talking about. Pigel yeh, it will be pigel. And a person who eats from this is a chiv kares, right? So the pasuk talks about chutz lizmanai, right? So we see over here the pasuk shows you that chutz lizmanoi, right, outside of the 3-day window, you'll be chayiv kares, right? That's why we say it's davka by chutz lizmano, not chutz koimoi. Chutz koimoi also is pigel, but not with kares. But over here, the pasuk says you get kares. But that's what is it? What do we learn out from this pasuk? So it's so mi shepigluhu garimlo. The only time you're going to be chayiv kares is only if it's the pigel alone. In other words, there's nothing else problematic. Yotzezeh, excluding this case where the zrika was shlobim kaimai, shein piguloi garimlo el iser davar acher garimlo. There's a davar acher, so it's true. So Shmuel could kind of go on both sides. On one hand, he says in our Mishnah that if you sprinkle it the wrong way, it's possible for eating, but at least it does accomplish kapara for the Baal. However, the fact that you're not allowed to eat it, that's enough of considered to be another problem in the mix. In order, therefore, when we say that if you would have a machshav of a machar of chutz lizmanoi, so normally chutz lizmano, there's the iser pigel and your chayiv kares. But over here, ein bo kares, because it's not pigel, because there's something else in addition to the pigel issue. The Yahachi, back in the Gemara, so if sule nami l'misl. So if that's how far we're going to go, that it's only considered to be an issue of pigel if there's nothing else, but if there's something else, then it won't be chayiv kares. So then why do we say that it's possible at all? So Rav Nachman Yitzchak midahavi machshavas hinuach. So we say that it is comparable to another machshava of hinuach, of like leaving it. We lived Rabbi Yehuda in accordance to the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. So let's see, Rashi. Zrika de Shari Bas Bachila, Maisla de Pigel, Zrika Shul Shari, okay, well, Maisla de Pigel. So, fine. So basically, okay, there's the Rashi here. Yihachi delo havi zrika le'inyan machshava. So suli nam l'misl. Why do we say it's puzzle? So we say it's machshavas hinuach. Says Rashi, chashiv mia l'hanich l'machar. His intention was to leave the blood over for the next day. Believed Rabbi Yehuda, says Rashi, Tanan l'haniach medama l'machar kashiv Yehuda puzzle. So it actually is, you're right. So it's actually a machlokas, but according to Yehuda says that since you had the machshava of leaving over for the next day, so therefore then itself is enough to passel it, but won't be enough for it to be pigel. So that's, obviously you have to understand the why Rabbi Yehuda will say says it's poisel over there, but that we do have that sheet to leave Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, fine, weiter. So right now we've only encountered one opinion, the opinion of Shmuel. Shmuel says that when our mission told us that when the blood was applied to the wrong part of the Mizbeach, it's puzzle, but nonetheless, and as it can't be eaten, but it's still the Baal Received Kapar. Rish Lakish has a second answer. Rish Lakish puzzle mamish. No, when our Mishnah says it's puzzle, it means puzzle mamish. Legamri, as Rashi says, that's even the Baal doesn't achieve kapara. And even though it's not in the same place, it's still it's like the same. It's like the same. So the kasha is, how does that work? If we say shalom im kaimo is kim kaimo dami, then it should at least achieve something. V'lo kasha. Kansha nasan b'shtika, kansha nasan ba'mira. It depends. If you did it quietly in the improper place, but you didn't say anything, so in that case, says the Rashi, so balim nischapru. So they'll achieve kapara kishanasan b'shlomim kaima b'shtika. It was done quietly. Masnisin tani pasal b'nasan b'machshavas l'achol basar chutz l'zmanli is when you had the machshava to be able to eat it outside of its proper time. V'ashmin in the pasal v'in bokares is still there's no kares. The machshavas zrika zu machshavahi l'sol dekum kaimai dami. Okay, so it's considered to be enough that it's considered to be kim kaimai. So therefore, it's like problematic outside of pigul, and therefore, because of that, there's no chiv kares. However, nonetheless, it's still us. It's not mutter b'achila. Tanan. So again, our Mishnah is talking about, it was applied in different places. The Mishnah said that it's puzzle. So ad midi dehavi machshavas henuach v'yelibed Rabbi Yehuda. So again, you can basically keep reading the sugi above, and we say that you can say, well, okay, I understand why it's not pigul, so then why is it puzzle at all? It says a little bit of Rabbi Yehuda that says at the end of the day you did have the improper machshava of leaving over for the next day, and that's the reason why it's puzzle. So again, we have one opinion of our Mishnah, which is of Shmuel, that it doesn't achieve the opportunity for you to be able to eat the meat. It's puzzle, but again, at least it achieves kapara. According to Reish Lakish, he says that actually it does nothing. Our Mishnah is there's no kapara even for the Baal. That's only when it was done with this additional machshava. Namely, that a person had this machshava that that he was going to do the nesina chutz l'zmano outside the right time. So that's why it's l'machor is puzzle. That not only was his machshava that he's going to do it in the wrong place, but also of the Mizbeach, but also at the wrong time, not today. So that's when it's problematic. But if you would have the intention of doing it today, right now, then at least you would achieve kapara. So Rav Yochanan Omer it doesn't make any difference. Our Mishnah could also be talking a case where there was no additional machshava of doing it outside of the proper time frame. Actually, he'll just say that it's not kim kaimo dami. Again, you don't achieve kapara. It has to be done in the exact right place on the mizbeach, or else it's nothing. right? Ibaha ikad dam hanefesh. So the question is, I understand. We said before that he could just go and get new blood, and then he could just do it that way. And the answer is ha deleka dam hanefesh. There is no other blood to be able to redo it. So if there's no more dam, practically he just can't do a second zrika. So that's what it's come to say. If you could get more dam, then you should do that, so you'll be able to. You'll get kapara and everything. But otherwise, if you just don't have it, you don't have it. Question 10. Rav Yochanan is lavkim kamidami, that holding the wrong place. Case mi yashim asnisin ahadadi the chadakatani to kanta laser v'lizrik. One says do it again, and one says it's possible without a takana. So what's the answer? Pretty simple. So yeah, you should do it. If there's more dam, then you should go and do it again. Do the kabbalah and the zrika. But if there's no dam hanefesh, then obviously just practically you can't. Okay, let's just quickly take a peek over here. See if we have another question yet. Nothing for TA, TB. Fine. Question TB7. Zrika shelo bimkoimoi, right? Lamandi Yomer Kim Kaimo, right? Ma din kishiz zarak b'machshavas pigel. So this is what didn't write the correct answer. So the answer is what we're looking for over here, which is a very complex question. So basically, we're saying that chishev l'tns and a sin l'matul l'ma'ala, right? So it depends. Will alter is kosher, okay, and l'mocher is going to be possible. Okay, we'll just keep it simple. Okay, mahadin kishit zarek b'machshavas pigel. So again, l'alter kosher and l'mocher possible. But again, obviously, that doesn't completely answer everything, but that's pretty much probably a good piece. A good way to start. L'macher pasul. Okay, there's probably more to it than they want, but let's just say it. Let's say it that much, and that's it. Okay, I don't have the answer key, so fighter. So Tanan pasul v'ein bo kares. So our Mishnah says that if you do the sprinkling in the wrong place, so it's pasul, but there's no kares. Now Bishlam Reish Lakish, who we established above, Hainu Tani pasul v'ein bo kares. That's why he mentions our case is where is a chiddush that you were not shaisik, but rather you had the machshava to do the zrika chutz lizmanoi, but nonetheless there's no kares because it's not pigel, because you didn't achieve kapara. So therefore, because of that, there's something wrong with this carbon outside of pigel. That's why there's ein bo kares. But you're still the chiddush of, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because you had an improper machshava, so it is possible. Oh, Rabbi Yochanan, my ein bo kares. What exactly does this mean according to Shmuel? Says Rashi, Dihu nami moikula b'shtika. He says it doesn't make any difference. You didn't have any other machshava. So how does he understand this, that there's ein bo kares, right? How does that make sense? Because if you hold that you didn't have this machshava, so then all you had was this. So how do we understand that in this case of ein bo kares? Apparently it'll be pigel. L'shmuel, my ein bo kares hachinami im nasen b'machshava pasul be'ein bo kares. When he's according to Shmuel, who says that we split it, he says what it means no kares means im nasen b'machshava pasul be'ein bo kares. If you have this other machshava, therefore that's the reason why, even though you would think normally it's pigel, but because according to Shmuel, since it's pasul, you can't eat it, therefore there's not going to be din kares on that. Okay. Rav Yochanan, understand. So he said if you did the zrika on the mizbech, so it's nothing because you didn't do it in the right place. Therefore, you don't get a kapar, you don't get anything. So, and we said, you should do it again if there's more dama nefesh. There's no more dama nefesh by that animal, then there's nothing you can do about it. There's no takana. So where it says, Haviki nishbach min kli ala ritzba v'yasfenu. I don't understand. So we know that, as Rashi says, kivan dalav zrika hu klal, it's like he did nothing. So we consider ki'ilu like the dam fell out of the kli, you did a good kabbalah, but then accidentally it spilled on the ground, so you can actually scoop it up from the ground and then apply it and do the zrika. So why don't we say the same thing? You have some dam on the mizbeach in the wrong place, why don't you scrape it off like it's on the floor, and then put it on the right place on the mizbeach? My answer is, because several command the lo yasvenu. Because actually, not everyone holds you could do that by scooping it off the ground, right? So, as Rashi says, kivan dehagil mizbech. Once it actually hit the mizbech, even though it was on the wrong place, kalti mizbech. So the mizbech basically absorbed it, right? It took, which means you can no longer take it back. Lafuki mataris kaparachrini, which means you can no longer take that dam off the mizbech and like reapply it or anything like that. That cannot be done. When it comes to the application on the top, or lamata, in other words, it was supposed to be put and it wasn't done properly because it wasn't done on the right area, then lo yasvenu. Everyone says you cannot take it back, right? You can't take it off the mizbech and put it back. So let me read this again. Everyone holds that when you apply lamala shenosn lamala, lamata shenosn lamata, that basically it was in the right above the chuta sikra or below the chuta sikra. However, it was still shlokim etzvasan. It still wasn't done properly, as Rashi says, kigain b'machshava or b'small, right? In other words, it was done in the right place, but you used your left hand, and you can't use your left hand. It has to be done, the avodah has to be with your right hand. So in that situation, since it was put in the exact right place, you can't remove it and then do it again, let's say, with your right hand. The machlokas is if not that you used your wrong hand, let's say, but you mamish put the dam in the wrong part of the mizbech. So in that situation, it's a machlokas whether or not you could remove it and reapply it, because when you put it there, originally it was just in the wrong place. As we continue to chav zayin mid base, so then we say like this: Umishna seinu kedivrei, and our Mishnah is kedivrei ha'omer lo yasvenu. It'll be like the one who says you can't redo it, and therefore that's how Rabbi Yochanan will say it. He'll basically explain that basically if there's no dama nefesh, so that's it. It's possible, and there's nothing you can do about it because you can't take it off and then put it back. Rabbi Chisda omer avimi hakoyim moedim benisnin lamata shenasnan lamala shlo yasvenu. Actually, everyone holds that if it's in the wrong place, then you can't redo it. The kol shekain benisnin lamala shenasnan lamata. Certainly, if let's say it was supposed to be on above and you put it below. So based on gravity, that where something which is on the top, it drips down naturally. So if it was on the top, right, and it was supposed to go on the bottom, so maybe you think it's okay because it's going to drip down to the bottom anyway. We say that's a problem. But certainly, if it was supposed to go on the top and all you did was put it on the bottom, so then it's never going to reach the top, right? So the question is if that it was actually put on instead of inside the inside, like by the kodesh, then instead it was done on the outside, or vice versa. So it when it comes to the mizbech itself, that you at least put it on the right mizbech, then everyone holds that you cannot redo it because the mizbech was koilet. However, in the situation where you put it on a totally different place, right, a totally different mizbech, So then in that situation, it's a machlokas. According to Rabbi Yossi says you could get it, kivandul mizbech zel lo yeroi lo klate klal, because you put it, let's say, on the wrong mizbech, right? So since you didn't put it on the correct mizbech, it's not going to be koilate that dam. Okay. So that's another opinion of what the machlokas is. Omer Rav Nachman Yitzchak Afana Namitanina. We actually also have support to this from our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says, and based on this pasuk, we're going to break this up into three different mi'utin. The pasuk says, Saves Aaron ves banav leimor zois taras oila. This is the law of the carbon oila. So we learn out that hari elu mi'utin. So these three words, zos, he, and the hey in the word ola, these are extra, and they're coming to exclude things. Prat nishchata b'layla. First of all, if a person would shecht at night, that is problematic. Second of all, the shenishvach dama, when a person sprinkles its blood, the shiyotze dama chutz l'kilayim, or for that matter, if let's say the dam goes outside of the proper area, im olsa tered. If you put it there, you have to take it down, says Rashi. Avol sharp psulin im ol yardu. Even though all these things are psulim, but when it comes to any other psul, the din is lo yardu. You don't touch it. However, when it comes to these three things, you actually remove this. Okay, so again, the three are when you spill the blood, or you shechted it at night, or the dam was brought outside of its designated area. Shimon Omer oila, so he says that it goes up. Ainly el oila kshera. When it says the word oila, that's mashma. The carbon is fine. Menayin the rabba shenishchata b'layla v'shenishbach dama sheyitza dama chutz l'kilayim, that it's included in this. V'halein in the leftovers v'yoytze, the one who brings it outside the designated place, v'tamei, someone who is impure, v'shenishchat chutz l'zman v'chutz l'mkaymai, shecht in the wrong place or time, v'shekibul psulin, it was kabul by a psul, v'zarko es dama, he sprinkled the blood, here's the key words, v'nitn l'mala shenas l'mata, you put it in the wrong place, the top or the bottom. That is an important line, as well as this one. So we see also that that's also included. So how do we know also when it comes to a Pesach, which was shechted on Erev Pesach, Shulo Lishma, that it's possible, and Achatas. So Talmud Leimer, because the pasuk says Taras Ha'oila. So Riba Torah, so the Torah is actually coming to include Achas Achol Oilin. It's coming to include all different types of carbon oils. She'im Olu Yardu. Then all these situations that if it's already up there, you don't take it off. So this actually demonstrates what we said before, that when it comes to the blood applications, it doesn't make a difference, actually, whether it was on the right mizbeach, but just in the wrong place, up or down, or even it was on a totally different mizbeach. Nonetheless, we are not going to take it off and reapply it. So, so maybe we're going to include these other things. For example, an animal that was cohabited with, says Rashi, al pi eid echad, there was one witness, mutter lehejet also lekavaya. In that situation, since only one witness, it's hedget still allowed to partake of this animal, but it's also as a carbon. V'chein muksa v'nevid v'treifa. So muksa shehuksu takruvas v'skachavim. It's designated for idol worship. Nevid means it would actually a person bowed down to this animal. V'ha'esnan u'macher, which are used for paying a harlot. V'kilayim. The mixture of, Rashi says, shor or kesev pratli kilayim. It has to be an animal, but not one which is a mix. Vatreifa v'yoytze daifin. So all these different situations. Talmud Lemer zeis. So the pasuk says zeis. Now Umari, so Rabbi says elu haytzias elu. Why are we including all these and excluding all those? So Marbani yes elu, I'm including the ones above by putting the, let's say, the blood applications in the wrong place. Shari psulin b'kodesh, that there's a psul in the actual carbon. It says Rashi Mishabo Lazar Nislu, that once it was brought, everything was fine, but once you actually brought the dam in, and you did it wrong, that's what puzzled it. Yes elu, all these like other animals that you worship, let's say idols with, Shohay psulin b'kodesh, because it was possible even before. It was just psul v'oimedes. So therefore, that's the distinction. Katani miyeh, but nonetheless, we did learn that nitlo mata shnas l'mal l'mal shnas l'mata v'lo pag Rabbi Yehuda. And we see actually Rabbi Yehuda doesn't disagree. He actually, it's not a machlokas that you don't take it down. So my time, la mishum dekalt mizbech. So actually, because the mizbech absorbed it, and therefore you can't take it down. Mishma mina lo yasvenu. That's the reason why you can't take it off and reapply it. So Rabbi Lezer mizbech pnimi. So that's basically what we're saying. That sounds like a pretty strong answer. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer mizbech pnimi. When it comes to the inner mizbech, the mizbeach hazahav mikdash psulin. So we say that when it's put on that, the din is that we say im olu lo yardu, that you cannot take it down at that point. So my kamashma tanina nitnalo bifnim b'chulu. So we already said this line above that if it was in the in to the out to the in, it says beferish, that in all those situations, shim olu yardu. So we already said that you don't take the dam off and reapply it, even if it's on a different mizbech. Now, dam. Maybe it's only if the dam was put in the wrong place, wrong mizbech, the chazile, because it is still fit. Of a kaimitz, the chazile, when it comes to kaimitz, says Rashi, it's not fit at all, because the pasuk says lo salu alav kataris zara b'oilam mincha. It says explicitly that you cannot put it there, right? So because of that, it becomes totally worthless. So a malo, maybe at that situation, if it goes up there, you could take it down. Kamash Malon, even by the kataris, you have to the kaimitz, you don't remove it. So meisvei kataris zara. Let's say when it comes to a person who has a kataris, the spices and was given as a free will offering. So in that situation, she'olso legam mizbeach, when it's put on the mizbeach, tear it. So the din is you have to take it down. Why? The only time we say this is when it comes to the outer mizbeach. Chitzon in panimi lo. Only when it comes to the inner one, but not the only the outer one, but not the inner one. Says Rashi. When it comes to the kamitza, which is not memkadosh in the kli, so we make an exception to that, and therefore, apparently, when if it would be put in the inside, so the din would be different. So we're talking about this type of spices. It was put on the outside, tear, and then you take it down. So in that situation, if it was brought in the outside, then we say that it will be taken down. Hapanimi, however, was brought on the inside, bin roylo, bin she'in roylo, my taima, high ritzba, the high klisharis. What does this mean? So look at Rashi. High ritzba, bebinyan avanim shlo nimshach. When it comes to the stones which were not anointed, lafikach ein kedushasu bezet chamura. We're not so strict when it comes to that. However, when it comes to mizbeach hazahav, which is considered a klishares, because we says umashcham im hamishkan, that when it comes to the mizbeach hazahav, we're much more strict. So when it comes to the outside, if let's say it was put on the outside, so then we say fine, tear it, it's no problem, you can take it down, because the mizbeach, we're not going to be so strict. You can take it off. However, the mizbeach panimi, we say no. In that situation, im oil loy teir. In that case, you would not take it down. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's look at question 11. My nafkamina. What's the difference? Bein mizbeach hachitzon lebein mizbeach panimi. Bekidish apsuon im oil yardu. Matam achiluk. So we just said hachitzon ein mekadosh el beroilo. It can only be sanctified things which are fit for it. Even something which is not fit for it. Why? The panimi kedusha chamura. The inner mizbeach, right? The mizbeach zahav, where more is more chomer, right? Is more strict. Why is it more strict? The havi klisharis, the nimshach, right? We did shemen on the mizbeach, right? So we're makadosh it. So therefore, because of that, it has more ability to be able to absorb, if you will, even things which are not fit for it. Mashein kenachitzon b'nidavanim, who it's stone, v'lo nimshach, and it was actually not anointed. And therefore, because of that, if something was put on it improperly, it doesn't accomplish anything, and therefore it could be taken down. Okay, we're going to again stop there. Let's look at TA7. Ezu davar ein mizbeach achitzon mekadesh kivan she'in roy lo chutz mikamatzim shlo kachi b'kli, which is exactly what I thought the answer would be. Madu mizbeach apanimi odif. Okay, that we know. So the answer is kataris zara, right? Which is kataris nedava. Okay. So what does it say? Other than what? Other than kamitza. Okay. So when it comes to kataris. Nedava mizbech benimi mekadosh dahavi klisharis mashim chitzoin dahavi ritzba. Okay, so it's a similar answer. That was TA7. Question TB8. We will see that tomorrow. Ad kan.